get started.
All right. Chairman Lockmiller,
Here.
Alderwoman Eberly,
Here.
and Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Move on to agenda approval. If there's no changes, can we just approve by acclamation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to number 3, citizen comment. Shelley, do we have anybody from
We do not.
out there virtually? All right. City administrator report, Bull, anything?
Nothing.
Move on to reports of chair and alderman. I'll go ahead and I'd like to thank David for his many years of service as the chair of public safety. It's going to be a hard shoes to fill, but I'll try. I kind of like to run the meetings kind of like David did. They're just kind of discussions and workshops. We don't pass any legislation, so I kind of relax the parliamentary procedures and just kind of work our way through a discussion on each topic. One of the 2 things I'd like to see if the committee wouldn't mind taking up in the future based on some citizens' input. One is, you know, and Pat, you probably don't know this, but a couple of years ago, we worked on something called the Traffic Calming Toolkit, and we kind of spent probably a year working on that. Dan was instrumental in putting that together for us, and it seems to have been put on a shelf. And with us talking more and more about putting out traffic calming radar and speed cushions, I'd kind of like to maybe re-look at that at a future meeting before we deploy some of these things to make sure that we're doing it properly and we're getting like Chief Curtin involved in our public works. So I don't want to just do it individually. I'd kind of like a consensus if you all are into go ahead and bring back that topic and looking at it again when it comes to installation of these speed cushions and radar. So I would just, hands up if you wouldn't mind if we take this up at another meeting in the future or have any questions.
Well, obviously, I'm always in favor of debates about a traffic calming toolkit. I will say, and so I welcome it, and sure, let's have the discussion. I do recall we hashed out, the issue of speed cushions and humps and bumps and what have you, I think pretty thoroughly. Unless there is some new information, I tend not to be for them, but by all means, let's have the discussion.
Well, pretty much, just a discussion on if we need to have, instead of just an alderman saying he wants a speed cushion thrown down, maybe some criteria before we just go ahead and do it at the committee level, I guess is what I'd be looking at, just a discussion. So would it be all right to put that on a future agenda?
It's fine with me.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah. When you put up the agenda, could you have kind of a little synopsis of what you've done already or what it contained?
Sure.
I have no idea.
Yeah, definitely. Dan can do that.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
The other issue I had was I get a lot of complaints, and not so much, regarding fireworks. And I like an explosion, just like the other guy. But evidently these things, besides the 4th of July, continue to go on. And I know probably police get calls on it. And I just kind of like maybe a discussion at one of our future meetings on if there's something we need to do to tighten up the use of fireworks. A lot of these things are getting to be commercial grade. And I get neighbors that are complaining how much debris they end up dropping on homes. So it's, I just want some type of consensus from the committee before we send staff running in all kinds of directions on this subject, if we wouldn't mind taking it up at a future meeting.
Fireworks are not legal in Brentwood, right? So right. Is that, it's in terms of, sure, let's take it up, but it's an enforcement issue, isn't it? That's, to me, I don't we're not seeking to amend the ordinance that would perhaps allow anything. I don't even know if sparklers are allowed. I mean, but, right, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
I would-
wrong. Because I mean, my house is very close to my neighbors, and if anyone shot off, it would be dangerous.
Well, that's what we need to visit and see what, if we need to put any teeth in anything as far as beyond the 4th of July, having enforcement of these things. So,
Well,
go ahead, Pat.
we stood on the McCutcheon Bridge, the 4th of July, and watched them go off in Richmond Heights that were darn near as good as you'd find on the riverfront. So,
That's correct.
but, there's not much we can do about that.
Yeah, and there may not be anything we can do, but like I say, I've had several citizens call me and wanting to
I did too.
have us look into it. So if you all wouldn't mind, I'd like to put that on an agenda in the future.
Sure.
All right, well, that's all I had. I guess, let's see, Alderman Plufka, I guess we don't have him with us. Pat, did you have anything report-wise?
No, I didn't.
Sonny, how about you?
I have no report.
All right. We shall move on to department reports. And the first up is Fire. Chief Curtin or Ronnie, who's up?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that. This is Terry.
Okay.
I may have Ronnie provide a little input. We'll see where we go here. Let me get this to expand. How come it works fine until you want it to work? My apologies. I don't know why this isn't responding. All right, let's try it this way. So I wanted to just update you all on the condominium fire, speaking of 4th of July, that we had on Swan Circle, West Swan Circle that night. Still don't have a dollar loss amount yet from the insurance companies. And we did go ahead and release the cause as officially undetermined. We do have a reason to believe that smoking may have been part of that, but we could not prove that in any way. So we just chose to go with undetermined. The insurance companies will hash out all those details, and we'll find out what their determination is officially at some point in the near future when we get their loss amounts, see if it lines up with ours. But I just want to share that information. We've been working with the insurance company for the insured at that property, and they've been very good to work with, and their investigations are done. But the adjuster is out of town on vacation, so their assistant that's filling in was hesitant to have a conversation. So I'll hear more from them next week, I hope. Shifting gears, our hiring list process is underway. We finished the testing. We started with 17 applicants. I'm sorry, I think we had 20. Then we went down to 17 that were tested due to no-shows. And we've narrowed that down to 13 applicants that will be interviewed starting on the 27th and 28th, where that list will then be narrowed down to 10. And we'll move on to the final interview round on August 4th. So we hope to have this process done very shortly as we enter into the month of August. So when the board decides and BOLA gives us the green light to move forward with hiring, we'll be ready to go. Appreciate that opportunity, BOLA and the board. So I wanted to share with you also our medical officer promotion process kicked off. The application period closed last week. I have one applicant for the job. I'm very excited about the candidate that's thrown his hat in the ring. We'll have more to come on that. He's been out on sick leave, so we've got the process is somewhat stalled until I get him back and up to speed, and we'll move forward with that shortly. So, and then lastly, I wanted to share with you all, number one, the fire department's and my personal thanks on allowing us to purchase a new boat, motor, and trailer. It has not been in service very long, and it went into use for the second time, I believe, recently, assisting on a body recovery. Somewhat began somewhere in the Webster, Brentwood area and ended up terminating in the river to Pear. This was last Friday night. We got involved initially to help try to provide a boat to help them with the recovery. And before we knew it, we had a rescue that we were dispatched to, where several police officers in a neighboring city got caught, walked out into the creek. The creek was very low and safe, and before they knew it, the flash floodwaters had trapped them. So fortunately, they got out on their own before we could get there, but we were quickly dispatched east of there to the river to Pear, where Brentwood and the city of St. Louis deployed our boat and made the body recovery, and somebody's loved one will be put to rest appropriately. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you. The reason being, the crews that operated in the boat could not stop talking about the differences between this craft and the one we had before. And I just want to thank you all for giving us the safer equipment. It was much, much appreciated. So that's all I have in my report. So thank you for the opportunity.
Then I think under new business, you have an issue with SSM, I see.
I do.
Pending a contract. Why don't we go ahead and save that till new business?
Perfect. Okay.
All right, great. Thanks, Chief.
You bet.
All right, we've got the police department. I see you down to the end of the table. What do we got?
We're camera shy, so we're a little deep into the picture here. So from a crime perspective, Angie and I were just talking about this. It's been quite a while since we had a robbery or a sexual assault or a serious assault, really. It's been months pre-COVID. So knock on wood, that's a good thing. Downside is our car crime it's not horrible, but it has resurged in the last couple of weeks. What we're seeing is cars being broken into during the day at our retail areas and garage areas. These are typically people that are going around in stolen cars, they're smashing windows, they're targeting for weapons and computers and things like that. At night, we're seeing the same pattern that we've talked about over and over again, and that's multiple guys in cars coming into neighborhoods, coming up in the driveways. They're also looking for guns. They typically do not break into vehicles. They're looking for unlocked cars. And yet again, out of the 3 cars that we had the last 2 weeks that were stolen autos, all 3 had a key fob in them. So we're repeatedly seeing the same thing. Angie put out a message again this week on social media about leaving your key fob in your car. And on top of that, out of the cars that have been broken into the last couple of weeks, they got 3 more handguns. So those patterns are consistent, and we just can't seem to get these folks to listen, not to leave their guns in the car and don't leave their keys in their car, because that's exactly what these guys are after. Everything else that's listed on the crime report really is related to more theft and shoplifting events. So what I wanted to do is turn it over to Major Hawkins. On the police report, we listed the officer safety training program, and we went into a little detail of it. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at the documents that were posted.
Right.
But really what we wanted to do was give you an overview and a fuller understanding of the mission of this training. The primary reason that we're doing it is for the safety of our officers. But as you see in the last month or two, these consistent issues with law enforcement nationally, there's a lot of teachable moments during this training that we're working on. So I was going to let Angie just do a quick overview of it, and then if you all have any questions, she can answer them for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If you guys have the attached PowerPoint there regarding our officer safety program, and wouldn't mind pulling it up. I'll run through it really quickly. It's pretty brief, but it gives a really good outline of how we do what we do and why for this in-house training. And basically, the objectives of our program are to reduce violent encounters across the board with using de-escalation techniques to reduce injury to officers and suspects, and to always also be able to manage people who are in mental health crisis, which is very frequent for officer-involved use of force incidents. Very frequently, that is with people in a mental health crisis. So that's one of the objectives of the training, is that we harp on that de-escalation and those techniques, and point out that if we need to take the time to de-escalate something versus going hands-on, let's do that. The second objective is officer safety, and reinforcing with our folks that they need to have sound judgment under duress. And that's one of the reasons we do this training the way that we do it. And I'll get into the technical aspects in a little bit, but we do put our officers under a good deal of stress during this training. And after that, we get to critique their actions and their behaviors as if they were on duty. So it pretty well mimics the stress or duress that they would be under in a real life scenario. Also, we reinforce with them safety in numbers. Letting them know more officers can mean less resistance and less force needed. A lot of times if you have one-on-one, somebody might think, oh, I could take this police officer. But if two people show up at the same time to a scene or a call, that's a lot less likely to happen, and that keeps everybody safer. The third objective is the tactical response, and it's basically reinforcing consistent real-life training scenarios, so that they can practice their tactical skills, their personal safety skills. And we force them to assess scenes, plan for what they're going to do, communicate with one another, and have controlled and measured responses to service calls or even self-initiated activity or things that they happen to dunce into if it's a crime in progress. So those are the three objectives. The next slide are the 6 tenets of the program. And the first one is personal preparedness. The second is being able to read signals of the bad guys. The third is safety in numbers. Oh, yes.
Major Hawkins, and I might be over my skis in terms of technology. Is it possible to screen share your very good PowerPoint so our public viewers can see it too? And again, if that's not possible, my knowledge base on this is 0.
Okay, hang on, because yours is probably better than mine, if that makes any sense.
I
Shelley
would
might
recommend
be
we
able
spend this
to.
amount of time on it. Like, if that's not possible, it's not possible.
I don't
Shelley
think
do
it
that?
is.
Shelley, can you do it?
Hmm?
Can you share it?
I can.
Okay, Shelley might be able to do
Great.
it.
Which slide are you on?
I am on the third slide.
Right. Are you there?
Yeah,
Perfect.
awesome. Okay, so the fourth tenet is reinforcing thorough pat-downs and searching for weapons. The fifth is safe self-initiated activities such as traffic stops, pedestrian checks, building checks. And the sixth is safe driving. And you see in the middle there, we say skill comes from consistent and deliberate practice. And that's another big thing another big reason for doing this is very frequently it's common for police to become complacent if they've been doing the job for a long time, if they've been doing the job for a reasonable amount of time and have never been involved in a violent or a dynamic encounter. It's very easy to become complacent. So we practice a variety of scenarios to keep our officers' training mindset in top shape. So I'll move on to the next slide. The first tenet, personal preparedness, that means a lot of different things for us, as I'm sure it does with Terry and Ronnie over at the fire department. We want our people to be physically fit with their exercise routines and diet, but also to understand their limitations. We have quite a few guys here who are very, very, very fit, in great shape, but we're pretty proud to say they also understand their limitations, and they would never try to take on a group of people or put themselves in a situation that they couldn't safely handle by themselves. So we reinforce those things. We also want them to be mentally fit. We want them to be well rested and to minimize personal distractions while they're on the job. As you all know, if you have something going on in your personal life, it's very difficult to come to work and focus on the task at hand, and for officers that can become very dangerous. a very dangerous distraction. We also have been starting to teach them visualization and practicing what they would do in certain situations. A lot of the officers already do that, but it lends to this training in that it prepares them for dynamic situations, and it forces them to think their way through tricky situations, whether or not those are dangerous, but it's extremely valuable. And to make sure that their equipment is in good working order, their vehicle is in good working order, that their weapons are operational, both their lethal weapons and the other less lethal options that we have, including the Aspeton, taser, mace, beanbag, shotgun, their handcuffs, their lights, tourniquets. We want to make sure that they have all those things that are operational for them and within easy reach for them, so that in the heat of the moment, they can get to those things very quickly. The benefit of this training too is when we put them under stress, it's very beneficial to see sometimes an officer's motor skills will completely shut down on them, and they'll have a very hard time turning on a flashlight, using handcuffs, applying a tourniquet, because that's basically just how the human body works. But it's really beneficial to show the officers what can happen to your body physiologically during some of these encounters, and it's been a huge benefit in that regard. I'll move on to the next slide. We teach them to read danger signs, and this has been a work in progress here in Brentwood. It's much different from when the chief and I came from St. Louis City. We had a lot of encounters with some pretty dangerous people, and that's not as frequent here. And so we've had the opportunity to really teach some officers what that looks like. And since beginning this training a couple of years ago, we've seen them grow into that in the field and really be able to recognize some of these things on the right that you see here. When a person's shaking or trembling for something that doesn't really make any sense, excessive sweating, their heart rate is up, their eyes are darting around, they're fidgeting. A lot of those things can be danger signs for people who are trying to escape or for people who are trying to do harm to the police. And we teach them all of that so that they know what to look for and pay very close attention to people who are exhibiting those things. And I will go on to the next slide. I put this quote up here because I thought it was really, really important and really prudent. There is, of course, great value in belonging to a group. Safety in numbers, for one, but there is also a mathematical explanation for why the brain is so willing to give up its own opinions. A group of people are more likely to be correct about something than an individual. And I thought this was very appropriate to back up why we reinforce safety in numbers. It's not just about safety in numbers, it's about good decisions in numbers. You know, we look at things that happen like in Minneapolis and you think, how did that happen? And you hope that by having more people there, a correct decision will be made, a better decision will be made. And that's one of the other things that we enforce in these trainings is if you see somebody doing something that's unsafe or unwise or downright stupid, step in and stop them from doing it. And even if it's tactically speaking, and we have had officers really embrace that and take the lead and just be leaders in this, and it's been really, really amazing to watch. We do recognize also that officers tend to show what we like to call law enforcement maturity when they can reach a point where they can quickly recognize the need for more officers to safely resolve some of the more volatile situations that they encounter. And that's coming a long way. There's a Superman mentality sometimes in police work where officers tend to think, I don't need backup, I can handle this myself. You can imagine how dangerous that mentality is. And again, I'm pleased to say many of our officers are very well aware of the situations wherein they need more than one officer or more than two officers, and they're not afraid to ask for help. And that's beneficial in an innumerable number of ways. So on to the next slide. Obviously, we were talking about safety in numbers. We teach a concept called cover and contact. And basically, this establishes one officer to be in contact with anyone, a suspect, a citizen, whoever, and the other officer is simply the cover officer, and they're there to maintain scene security. They kind of watch everybody's back and make sure that any danger cues that are being set off or any unsafe physical conditions are being addressed, etc. It really reduces confusion. It reduces miscommunications, which can lead to unintended use of force incidents, etc. So it's a really key piece to what we teach here. We also teach them to meet and go, that safety in numbers piece. You meet prior to responding to a call, you can decrease the likelihood of a single officer being ambushed or assaulted. And the arrival of 2 or more cars is sometimes psychologically intimidating for somebody who doesn't want to do harm to an officer or a civilian. And it's been very beneficial as well. Finally, in this piece, we talk about monitoring the radio, and all of our officers scan all 8 ECDC radio channels and listen for things that go on in other jurisdictions so that we can be of help. And that is in addition to listening to our own radio traffic. And if somebody calls out on a traffic stop or a self-initiated activity or crime in progress, they formulate a plan based on that and immediately start to head that way. And that's a pretty big deal as well. We practice all of these things in the training role plays that we do. Every single aspect I'm discussing has a piece in every single scenario that we've put forth. The next slide discusses searches and pat downs. And I think the impetus for this inclusion in this training stemmed from real life experience. The chief and I have both seen police officers making the same mistakes again and again for decades. And a lot of those mistakes come in the form of bad searches and bad pat-down searches where somebody misses a weapon and an officer or a citizen gets seriously injured or killed. And so we focus very heavily on making sure that our officers do thorough pat-downs and very thorough custodial searches. And we break that down into 4 ways, basically, ensuring that they search the same way every time. And each officer has their own routine, how they search. And the better that routine is, the more routine it is, the easier it is for them to do effectively and safely. We teach them to search vehicles and people in quadrants so that it's very methodical. We also teach them to double search. If you recall the Arnold officer a few years ago who was shot in the head by a suspect in the back seat, somebody might have searched him prior to that, but they missed the gun he was carrying. And a double search, a triple search of him might have uncovered that gun and saved that officer from being shot in the head. And to that point as well, we teach before you put anybody in a police vehicle for transport, they are searched yet again very thoroughly. We talk a lot about self-initiated activities as well. Obviously, these are very dangerous for law enforcement officers, and we focus on these tips to protect our officers and our citizens during such encounters. We teach them to call out so that they have an appropriate location for where they are in case they need help. We teach them to control the scene so that there's no surprises if they can help it, recognize danger cues, and then we teach them good tactics so that they can physically handle anything in case it comes up. Then the final piece, we teach safe driving. We teach them you're only able to help if you make it there safely, and teaching them how to drive in a controlled manner while you're under stress is very important. We don't have a lot of pursuits, but when we do, they are.
Sorry to interrupt. Shelley, can you advance the slide?
Self-initiated, yeah.
She was on that last.
Sorry, yeah, I'm on the safe driving slide.
Good.
So, like I said, we don't have very many pursuits, but when we do, that means a good crime has happened, a violent crime has happened, and pursuits can be very dangerous. So we teach our officers, although it's probably something you can't pursue in some cases, you still need to take into account the risk that a pursuit is going to pose to the public. And we teach that in the trainings as well, to make those decisions, to really think their way through how best to go about arriving to their calls or responding to things or getting involved in police pursuits. Finally, this is really big for us. The program allows us to emphasize all of these areas that I've just kind of reviewed for you guys, and we have a hands-on review of their performance. Every single time that we do one of these, the chief and I are present, and we are critically reviewing every single officer on this police department and their performance in these scenarios. And we review it with them. Sometimes we review it later together and use it for training for other officers on the department to try and make everybody benefit from something that either went really well or something that didn't go as well as it should have. And it also gives us the opportunity to make very clear our expectations for their conduct in a huge variety of situations, which is an outstanding piece to this program. It's not that we're putting them through training somewhere and sending them off and hoping that that's sufficient, but we ourselves are coordinating this and explaining to them why we're having them do what they do and what we expect them to do in certain situations. And the goal, of course, is to meet the 3 program objectives discussed earlier with the officer safety and the tactical response and the reducing violent encounters. So that's a basic review of the training goals, etc. I've moved on to the very last one, I think. This is a picture of our training coordinator. He was less than pleased that I put a photograph of him into the slide. And his wife actually critiqued the picture that was chosen. So you'll all have to ask him about that when you see him next. He is our training coordinator, and he manages and documents and facilitates not just this training, but a huge amount of all of the training we do here at the police department for the Missouri Post standards, for continuing education standards, this training, equipment needs, field training. We have attached his job description as well to one of the to board docs, just for everybody's reference to see how much he's tasked with. So that's it in terms of that portion of it. If the chief would like to jump in, or if anybody has any questions on what I've already kind of talked about.
Any questions for Major Hawkins? I have one. I was looking at the safety year-end reviews that you also included in there.
Sure.
How are those carried out? Are they in the station, or do you actually go to a physical location? Or
Yes, sir. We go to a physical location. We've had the benefit of being allowed access to some of the local firing ranges when we do our more dynamic scenarios, and we have the opportunity as well to go and do our trainings in some local abandoned warehouses, buildings, vacant homes, etc., schools while they're not in service, things like that. And City Hall, we've used the City Hall before, scaring the librarians at one point, but we've learned our lesson from that. And so we use real life places inside the city of Brentwood to make this as realistic for our officers as possible. And every aspect of what we do is designed to make it mirror their actions every day as best as possible. So they switch their radio channels to training, and they call out just like they would a dispatcher. And we have someone designated to be the dispatcher in training. And they have firearms that are real firearms, but they're modified so they can only fire blank rounds. So their muscle memory and everything that they're doing is exactly what they would do on the street. They drive their police cars. They respond to locations in town for things that they either have responded to frequently, will probably respond to frequently. And then the third big piece of what we design our scenarios around is hot button topics around the nation. So you talk about the Atlanta shooting that happened after George Floyd. You talk about George Floyd. We have scenarios that are designed to mimic the lessons learned from each of those incidents to minimize any fallout of a similar incident here.
We also tend to mimic cases that happen here in Brentwood too, that are in the St. Louis community. For example, the Maryland Heights active shooter event that happened at their community center. We did that as a scenario. The Nordstrom rack incident a couple of years ago here in Brentwood, where the dispatchers put out erroneous information. We built that into a role play to make the officers think their way through it, recognize that the information they were given was inaccurate, and to handle it accurately as well. So there's all kinds of different ways that we play with these scenarios, but to Angie's point, they're usually based off something that happened here in the St. Louis area, here at Brentwood, something that happened to one of our officers. And we tend to also build them around things that make us most nervous about their well-being. For example, we do late night car break-in suspects. So we will thrust them into where they're patrolling an area at Brentwood, and they come upon a car being broken into, and there's 3 armed subjects. That's a very possible scenario, unfortunately, anywhere here in St. Louis area, but we've had that multiple times already in Brentwood. So that's typical of what we do. We build in scenarios that make them use their less than lethal tools. Honestly, we do not have very many scenarios that actively engage in gunfire. Most of these are, if they handle them well and appropriately, they are designed for less conflict. So, and that's what we're trying to show them, how to use their tools, how to use their brains, how to use their tactics to be able to de-escalate situations. We thrust them into them, we put them under duress, we stand there and watch them, and then we talk about them afterwards.
Okay. Any other questions for police? Sonny, go ahead.
Yeah, I have it's not so much specific to the very good presentation that we've listened to today, but I mean, I've been on public safety since I was installed as an alderwoman, and I am continually impressed by the professionalism, the responsiveness, the adaptiveness, the thoroughness of our police departments and also our fire departments. And in light of the climate that we are in today nationally, is there, I mean, I'm certainly these things are on our transparency portal, but is there something we can do to answer a question before it's asked, that to the extent that someone may knock on our door to defund the police, that we can say, like, we are CLIA certified, we are here, we have internalized these issues already, this is what we do, you know, and we have been doing it for a while, you know, just so our citizens can know that, you know, I think that we do a very good job of, you know, and how we run our force. I mean, I don't know if that's a big question.
It's not a big ask. Thank you for asking it anyway. Mayor Dimmitt directed Janet Levy, our communications manager, several weeks ago actually, to incorporate information that we've received from Chief Speece, and in response to some of the questions that are being asked out there, to prepare a response to all of that and put it on the website. So we expect that this will be going up tomorrow. So if people ask you questions, you can refer them to that on the website. We'll also be distributing it through all the city's communication platforms. So the plan is for that to be distributed tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, if I, Alderman Lockmiller, just real quick, we do these trainings on a regular basis, and if any of the elected officials, or really any of you in this call are interested, you're more than welcome to come out and watch. I think Terry Curtin and Ronnie have seen a little bit of it. They bounced into us at one of the training facilities. But if you have interest and you'd like to kind of get a feel for what we're doing, I mean, this is something that we'd be more than happy to have any of you watch and get a feel for it personally if you want.
Oh, definitely. Is there a scheduled time when these happen, or can you just send us an email?
Sure.
Yeah,
we always look for role players too. If anybody would like to be a bad guy, or really want to do that. Doesn't really feel too good, but you're welcome.
We actually have we have 4 dates scheduled in August as of right now. And if it's okay with you, Chairman, I'll go ahead and shoot those to you in an email, and you can distribute them to the committee if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks, Major. Anything else?
No, sir.
I just have one thing, you know, and I think you're all aware of it. I just want to thank first responders. We had an incident in our ward with an individual that needed some assistance. And everybody, you know, came together and helped this guy out, and I greatly appreciate it. So thank you. Dan, can we move on to Public Works?
Okay, there's several different items on here. Some are just real brief. You know, they were carryovers from previous meetings. So as far as the street light project, you know, we still have 5 to put in York Village. Those are the solar ones. They're in production right now. We made the first of 2 payments, and whenever they arrive in August, then we'll make the second payment. We still have easements to get with the individual property owners so that we can put those in. So once they're here, we still need to have that paperwork signed off on, and then we'll take care of those this year. We already did the other 20 streetlights that were in that RFP. Those have been done for some time. McKnight Road potential modifications, you know, that's another carryover. The only update I have, which I received today, is that starting August 3rd, MoDOT's going to put some message boards along I-64. That's what one of the residents had actually required, or not required, but inquired about, seeing if we could add those. We don't own message boards, and neither does Ladue. So we asked MoDOT. Originally they said no, now they said yes. So that'll hopefully, you know, try to minimize the number of trucks that go through there. There's some trucks that have local deliveries, you know, in those neighborhoods, that those would still need to come through there. But there's some other trucks that don't need to be there that could take Brentwood or Lindbergh or other north-south avenues. So hopefully over that 2-week period that they advertise with those message boards, it'll minimize the number of trucks that police see going through there. And then the last item is traffic calming projects. We already did a PowerPoint before, but I can update that and we can put it in your next meeting as you suggested. The update that I had for this traffic calming project in particular was regarding the speed cushion that we were asked to look into. We did make the purchase. It should be here by around August 14th, I believe. It should ship somewhere between the 11th and the 14th is what I was told. But backing up a minute to figure out how we got to where we talked about the speed cushion, we've purchased in the past, you know, we have the data collectors. So we've used the data collectors on various streets. We did use them on Pine back in 2018, because originally there was a suggestion that there were a lot of speeders, you know, back in 2016, that there needed to be a stop sign added near Hatton and Pine. CBB was given task order 46. They evaluated that intersection, and based on, you know, parameters that they observed, as well as looking at MUTCD, there was no actual recommendation to put in a stop sign. The only recommendation they had would have been some sort of warning sign for a side street, you know, a side intersection. So again, we looked at speeds in 2018 around 89-28 Pine, which would be between like Brentwood and High School, and then 93-47, one of those collectors was up, and that would be near Hatton and Pine. So if you drive through Pine now, you'll see as you're heading westbound, there's a radar-enabled speed limit sign to show you your speed and hopefully get you to slow down before you get to High School. And then in this case, near 93-47, near that Hatton area, we're proposing putting in a speed cushion. We'll work with fire to get it spaced just so, but the cushion will have slots to allow like a pumper truck to drive through those slots, but not like a regular passenger car SUV. They would go up and over that mound, so to speak. You know, there's 3 inches of vertical elevation difference in the speed cushion, you know, when you go across there. So we'll be getting that established sometime in August. I don't know if you have any other particular questions. The speed limit, the radar-enabled speed limit signs, you know, there's one at McKnight near Sonora. There's the one I already mentioned on Pine. There's one near the 8400 block of Rosalie. And then there's one on Annalee, which we took down. It's here at the shop. We'll put it back up tomorrow. There was an issue with a connection on the power, as well as the SIM card. The way it was actually in there was not correct. So I talked to the technician over the phone, got it corrected. It works. I can actually see it in the cloud now, because those are actually cloud enabled, where you can remote into them and see their operations in real time. So I don't know if you have any particular questions about any other areas. Oh, the other thing I need to mention is we put the data collector over on Dorothy. So it's like just north of Henrietta. You wouldn't even notice it if you're driving through there, but it's collecting data in real time right now, because the concern was that there's speeders through there. Right now, I'm not seeing that with it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but the 85th percentile speed's like 27 miles per hour, meaning 85% of the drivers going through there are doing 27 or less. I know it's a 20, but 27 is not exactly drag racing in a 20, but they are going over the 20.
Now, that's why I kind of wanted to revisit our toolkit, because I think a lot of times people perceive cars as going fast, but unless you really have the data from one of these collectors, you find that that's not necessarily the case. And, or
Right.
it may be a certain time of the day that maybe law enforcement can park there or something of that matter, instead of throwing up an obstacle in the way. If not, I mean, you know, at least that data tells us, yeah, we got an issue, and, you know, maybe it's time for an obstacle.
Yeah, and the one on Dorothy, I'll run for about a 2-week period, and then I'll give the data to police, and then you'll be able to see, as you're suggesting, there's patterns. So you'll see, I'm already starting to see that now, that there's certain times of day that you'll see larger volume, which typically there's, you know, a handful of speeders. The most I've seen so far was like 32 and a 20, which is, you know, it's more than 10 over. But it's only one outlier point that I've seen so far. And if we start seeing a pattern, you know, we can give them that information so that that helps direct them when they should be looking for that pattern.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any questions for Dan? Okay, seeing none. Is that it, Dan? Oh, wait a minute, Sonny, sorry.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to actually wave,
Just
but
flail around out.
yeah, right. Like throw a whatever. Dan, we're not doing any speed cushions. Are we test piloting those or?
It's a pilot program, the one on Pine, to see how people would react. So we already have readings, you know, of what real-time data was, you know, 2 years ago. I'll need to put the counter up before we put the things down and figure out what the volume is, what the speeds are. Then when they're deployed, see what that really did. You know, will you see the same volume go through there, and will they be going at a slower rate of speed? Or are you going to see a big reduction in volume where maybe they're cutting over to White or some other side street?
So my concern is, I mean, I would have thought that there had to have been some kind of vote on that. I'll just put my cards on the table. I live off of Pine. I have never been in support of speed cushions because I think they're an impediment to first responders.
Right.
And I can tell anecdotally, because I drive that road every day to get to work, the very long commute I have to go to get to the CIBC building. I take the long way just to get ready for a very enjoyable day at work. And the speed, you know, the solar speed thing that captures how fast you're going, I find to be an effective deterrence. But I'm surprised to learn that we're just going to do this. And I will selfishly say, please don't do it on a road that a first responder may use to get to my neck of the woods. I mean, I just feel like before we do that, there should be. I will be the loyal opposition. I will get through being outvoted. I will, and that's. We can have a full-throated debate, but to just go and do it, I'm surprised to learn at that, because I thought that in all previous discussions that we had, at least on this level, it never got through. It never got a majority vote. At least that's I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's how I remember things.
Well, welcome back to my statement in my report, because I did too. I thought there was going to be a little bit more of a protocol or some type of procedure before one of these things are deployed. I don't know if whoever house this is going in front of, I don't know if they've been notified.
No, we haven't notified, no.
You have?
No, we have not.
So, you know, I think, I don't want to say a full-blown policy, but, you know, collecting the data and then, you know, at some level deciding whether this should be deployed or not, or like you're saying, Sonny, maybe all it takes is a radar telling you how fast you're going.
Yeah, I'd like for there at least to be some kind of direction from the board. I mean, you know, and I believe me, I I get overruled all the time in my job. It's, I mean, if I lose, I lose. That's fine. I hope I don't, but you know, to just put these up. I mean, because we have heard a lot of. I mean, it moved me that, you know, that this is an impediment to a first responder. That's why we don't have them. And before I'm reluctant to just do a test pilot, you know, when we haven't at least had a direction from us saying do a test pilot.
So what we can do, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what we can do is kind of hit the brakes a little on this, because I don't really fully remember what the last discussion was. I thought that maybe we had received direction on at least to purchase it, and then, which is why it's in the budget, and then where it needed to be placed, because it seemed like there was just one particular location where we seemed to be talking about a lot, and that was that one location that Dan measured and that Terry also went out and looked at, and that there was some sort of internal agreement amongst us that that's where it could be placed. But so before we actually deploy it, we can bring it back as a discussion item at the August meeting so that this committee can decide. I'm sure, Dan, we have, you know, statistics that show, you know, that speeding is at this particular location, right? That we've been looking at. So
it's now, over a year old data, but we can put the deployment collector out there again and see if anything's changed. If anything, I would think it's gotten better because there's less cars on the road because of COVID, you know. So if there was more volume and more speeders, I mean, a lot of people are staying at home, and if kids are now e-home or learning at home or whatever you want to call it, you know, there's going to be less traffic as well.
we'll bring it back in August.
Yeah, in my recollection, and again, I mean, if I'm wrong, my recollection's incorrect, I'll live with that. But this was an example of truth confounding perception, that there were people on Pine lodging concerns about speeding on Pine, and in the area in which they were concerned, there was no speeding except this strip, and I don't believe that we've had a lot of complaints.
Right.
There was, the road. I mean, all I can tell you is what I drive every day. The road's a little wider.
It is,
and it lends itself to, you know, getting some lift off. I, of course, would never do a thing like that. But but honestly, the solar panel, you know, speed detector, I mean, it certainly keeps me in check. But anyway.
Well, I put it on the agenda, and let's put it on the agenda for August while we're talking about the toolkit.
Mhm.
Then we'll discuss it further then. Is that good with you, Sonny?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, just again, if I get outvoted, I'll live with it. But
Yeah, I know.
You know.
All right. Anything else for Dan? All right, let's move. We have no old business. We'll move on to new business. And Chief Curtin, I believe you have something about extending the contract with SSM for the firefighter wellness and fitness evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we do. This is nothing new. We've been participating in this since 2016. Excuse me. It's been very successful. We found and caught several medical conditions within some of our guys early and been able to treat them and get them back on track. You know, we've taken a look at our department, and about half or a little bit more or less are pushing that 15 to 20 year mark, which means they're aging. And this has been a very good program for us to try to help prevent injuries, accidents, and illness. And we've kind of expanded the scope just a little bit beginning last year with the psychological exam with one of their staff. And it was very positive. I heard a lot of really good things from the guys that came back. They really liked that. They liked that opportunity. So that's been a really big plus. The one change that's going into this year is let me back up. Last year, we started a cancer awareness and prevention program with some specialized blood tests that were offered to us through a third-party vendor from SSM. And all of our folks went through it, and to my knowledge, nobody was found to have any form of cancer indicators in those tests. So we wanted to repeat that going forward, because obviously everybody's a year older and things change as you age. But unfortunately, the vendor, that's one of the reasons the memo and everything was updated at the last hour. They backed out of providing us a quote. So we're not really sure exactly if they changed their feelings about this. They're just not fulfilling them this year. So we're going to work with SSM to come up with things that were very close. It won't be exact, but this program is very valuable to me and our department, and I would ask for the board, or the committee's support moving it forward to the board for extending it one more year. It should be noted that the original contract was for 3 years, and we had the option of 2 one-year extensions, which is pretty standard with the Brentwood contracts. I will be working with them. Myself and Chief Cottrell will work with them going into next year to reestablish a new 3-year contract, provided that the budget's supportive for it. So I would ask for your support tonight to allow us to extend this for the final year and continue this program.
And Terry, what's the cost and what was budgeted?
So we budgeted $23,600 for 2020, and we are going to be in the $13,500 range. Before the cancer was removed, we were closer to $20,000. So that was one of the reasons we budgeted higher. The other reason the reduction in cost this year is we're down to employees who have retired. So when we replace them, they'll go through similar evaluations, but it'll be under a different line item in our budget.
Okay, so once again, it budgeted 23.6, but what will the final cost be?
The cost this year would be $13,500.
Okay. Any questions for Terry? Well, and then you want this to go to the board as a resolution?
Yes, I'd like to have this go to the board meeting in August, if that's possible, and we'll put all that documentation on the agenda.
Entertain a motion to forward this request onto the board.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I don't see anybody. That's it for new business citizen comment. We have anybody out there, Shelley?
We do not.
All right, so we'll move on. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Don't
So
move.
moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Just right in an hour, so.
That's very
Thank you.
good.
Well
Very
done,
good.
Alderman Lockmuller.
Hey there, at least he had never been to a public works meeting.